Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for this information session. This is an information session regarding the Center for Water Security and Cooperation's Water Utility Leadership Fellowship as part of our Water Access and Equity Lab. So we're delighted to have you here. And I have a quick presentation that I will provide, giving an overview of the program, a little bit about the lab, a little bit about the application process and the application itself. And then the majority of the session is open for any questions that you may have. The session is being recorded so that others who are not able to attend today are able to benefit from anything that is discussed here. If you have additional questions after the session, please do not hesitate to email us. My email address will be available at the end. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So let me share the presentation. Okay, so the objective today is to just provide a quick overview of what the Water Utility Leadership Fellowship is all about, a little bit about the Water Access and Equity Lab, to answer any questions that you may have, and then also to encourage any emerging leaders that we have on the call to apply, as well as anybody who is part of a utility or who is a stakeholder really of the water sector and the sanitation sector, to encourage their colleagues to apply and to participate in this fellowship. So starting off with the purpose, this is a new initiative. We as an organization have been working on water and sanitation issues for several years now. And what we saw was this opportunity to create a space for emerging water and wastewater utility leaders to learn more about water equity, water access, water affordability, water assistance issues, including the law and policy side. So we focus largely on the law and policy side, regulations, and building that enabling structure, that foundation for providing all of these water and wastewater services. And so this fellowship creates that space to learn more about it and to get more comfortable talking about these issues, as well as actually engaging directly on them. It's an opportunity to network with your fellow utility leaders, as well as the community that you serve, and then any other sector stakeholders. So these might be nonprofits, they might be community action agencies, but other groups who also are involved in the sector in your community and also outside of your community. It's about bringing and building a stronger relationship with the community and the households served. It's also about bringing visibility to and helping advance these issues that are more and more coming up in the sector. So as I'm sure many of you have seen, water access and equity and affordability and assistance issues have really been at the forefront of some of the key challenges that utilities have faced, especially during the pandemic. So we have new programs at the federal and the state level that are supporting that, but it's important to ingrain those in our policies and our practices moving forward. And so this gives that space for emerging utility leaders to think about these issues, to participate in them, and to learn more about them. And then all of this culminates in a really exciting opportunity to actually develop a water access and equity policy for your utility. So the big question here, and I put this right up front, is why should you participate, right? You're busy. Why should you participate in this new fellowship? I think first and foremost, what's important is that emerging utility leaders have already demonstrated their capacity, their interest, their passion. And so this creates another space for them to really delve into these issues, to be a leader and lead the development of this policy for their utility. It creates a space for the utility as a whole to actually develop this policy, since the emerging utility leader will be working with the CWSC as well as their leadership to develop it. And really, the reason that it's now and not later is that this is an issue that's at the top of most utilities' minds. It's something that utilities, the community, really everyone in the sector has thought about, worked on. And given the priorities and given the challenges that are being faced, this is really one of those top issues that most utilities are working on trying to advance and address in an equitable way. And then that really leads into the final why participate, and that is because you can serve as an example. So the emerging leader has an opportunity to serve as an example for their community, their utility community, their community in general. as well as the utility itself gets to be a leader. They get to be ahead of the pack. They get to be a resource for other utilities who are struggling to do the same work or who want to do the same work but don't have the bandwidth or the capacity, or just don't know where to start. And so they can be, that utility gets to be a resource for others in the future in developing and focusing on these issues. So what exactly does the program look like? So the program is there's two parts to it. The first part is a learning and engagement session. So we'll have these workshops. The CWSC will host workshops about 3 to 5. And the reason it's 3 to 5 is we're still trying to figure out how long we want these sessions to be. Again, there's a sweet spot between them being burdensome in one day and having too many. And so we're trying to figure out what that sweet spot is, but having enough where emerging utility leaders can learn more, can learn about the law and policy regarding equity, access, and affordability, learn from guest lectures as well. They will have one-on-one calls with us as well as utility leadership. They'll get a chance to meet other fellows. So part of this is building a community between utilities so that emerging leaders from different parts of the country have other people that they can go to and have other people that they are growing with. And it's not just within their utility and their community, but outside of that utility and that community. Tying into that, they'll be building a network with other utility leaders, not just those in the program, but those outside and other people that we invite to speak and participate in the program. You'll also be building relationships with your community. And that's really critical in developing a plan that not only addresses the utilities needs, but also addresses and responds to the needs and challenges faced by communities and those households. You'll be part of the CWSC's effort to complete the American Water Access Survey. So we, for the first time in 2022, launched the American Water Access Survey, which does a diagnostic of existing laws and policies and plans regarding access to water and sanitation. And so you'll be part of that effort to better understand what the situation is, which then feeds into your work to develop a water access and affordability plan for your very own utility. So I said earlier that there are two parts. The first part is kind of that learning and engagement session with those workshops. The second part will be working with us to develop the water access and affordability plan for your utility. So who are we looking to apply? You must be a full-time employee of a water or wastewater utility. You should be poised to hold a leadership position within the next 5 to 10 years. Fairly generous timeline, but the idea is that you're growing into a leadership position within your utility and you're seeking that kind of leadership position. And then third, we want a candidate who has that passion, that interest in focusing on these issues and raising these issues up within their utility. Of course, all emerging water utility leaders are welcome to apply, but we are especially encouraging women, Black, Indigenous, people of color, Latino, and other candidates from communities underrepresented in the water sector to apply. And also, since we work internationally, we did want to note, since there was interest from some of our international colleagues, that while we love that they're interested in the program, that at this point we're focusing on US-based utilities, but hope to expand this to non-US utilities in the future, which I think actually would be really interesting for all utilities participating. So the application was designed to not be particularly burdensome. The idea is just to get a taste and a flavor of who you are and why you're interested in this opportunity. So there's some basic informational question that's asked from you. There are 5 application questions. I provided an example here. There's a 300-word maximum on this question. That's largely the word max on all of them. So you can see that the idea isn't to have you write a treatise, but just to give us a flavor of who you are and what you're thinking and why you want to be part of this program. We ask for your resume just so we can see some of your history, where you've worked, what you've done. And then there's 2 additional components. So we've asked for a sponsorship letter from an executive level staff member at your utility. This ensures that the leadership within your utility is supportive of you dedicating time to participating in the program, as well as they're aware of the requirements of the program. And then the letter of acknowledgement also feeds into that there's certain things that we expect you to do as participating in this program, one of which is at least work towards developing and adopting a water access and affordability plan. And so that commitment and and the time commitments are, we want them all to be understood up front. And so we have those two letters for which templates have both been provided. So again, the whole idea behind the application is that it shouldn't be a heavy lift. It should be fairly easy. And of course, we're available to answer any questions that you may have should they come up as you're preparing your application. An overview of the timeline quickly. So applications are due in a week. There's a possibility that we will extend that timeline, but no guarantees. We have had some requests, but at this point, our deadline is Monday, January 16th by essentially midnight. The timeline will largely be that applications will be reviewed within the next 2 weeks, and we'll invite applicants for a virtual interview. Again, there's only so much you can glean from paper, so we want to have a quick chat with you to get to know you better and make sure that you're a good fit for the program. We're looking to start the program or the fellowship at the end of February, so you can plan for that. And then in terms of just being able to plan as well for the in-person workshop in DC, we're planning to have that sometime in most likely late May, early June. Otherwise, there is no travel required. That's the only travel, and that's when you'll meet fellow emerging utility leaders. So that's an overview of the program. I tried to keep it fairly short because a lot of this information is available online. So I am happy to answer any questions. I see one question already. Thank you so much. So are state agency employees eligible? If you are part of a publicly owned utility, you are absolutely eligible to apply. So if you work for a municipal or county utility, yes. If you work for the Department of Health or the Department of Environmental Resources, unfortunately for this time around, you are not eligible. But please do reach out and let me know that you are interested. We've had a few people reach out who are part of who are engaged in other aspects of the sector. And as we think about future iterations of this program and the Water Access and Equity Lab as a whole, we want to stay in touch and be able to invite you to participate when those become available. Any other questions? I'm going to stop sharing so I can make sure I can see questions and answers. So we've had a question about how many spots are available. So we currently have 4 slots, but it's 4. So let me provide a little bit of an explanation for that. We are inviting 4 utilities to work with us, and for each utility, 2 emerging leaders can apply. Well, more than 2 can apply, but 2 will be selected. So if you're at a utility and you'd like a friend to work with as part of it, that's fantastic. So 4 utilities, 2 emerging leaders per utility. Another question from the audience is the emphasis on leadership or on an affordability plan? Again, great question. It's really split. So from our perspective, as part of the Water Access and Equity Lab, the focus is on raising up and giving utility leadership members a greater capacity to discuss and work on issues relating to access and affordability and assistance. And this has been something that when we've worked with utilities in other contexts, that has been asked of us. And so it's really split between in kind of building your leadership skills and your ability to engage in the sector, and then also developing the affordability plan, which we see as an outcome, but also as an opportunity to apply all those leadership skills and new opportunities that you have been able to engage in. Another question is, when is it due? So it is due Monday, January 16th by midnight. Again, I said we may extend the deadline, but that's not a guarantee. So we encourage you to apply this week. As I also mentioned, the application process is really developed not to be burdensome. I think probably the most time consuming are getting the sponsorship letter and the letter of acknowledgement into place, since those rely on somebody else. But the questions are really intended to give you a chance to give us a quick flavor and taste of who you are, and then everything will be there will be a follow-up with the interview following the application process. So January 16th by midnight. The last question, we have more coming in. Fantastic. So are there any costs to participate? No. So there are no costs to participating in the program. In terms of the Washington, D.C. trip, all of those expenses will be paid. Anything else will be paid. So all of that it's a no cost fellowship. We had a question, what if you're just a local elected person? Well, you're not just a local elected person. We're happy to have you here. Unfortunately, again, this is for utility employees at this point. This is our first iteration of this fellowship. Our hope, as I've said earlier, is to have more and different kinds of stakeholders participating in the lab. And so if there is an interest in participating in something like this and you're a local elected person, or you work at a nonprofit similar to ours that are working on these issues, or you work at a state agency like the Department of Health or the Department of Natural Resources, please let us know, because when we know that there's that interest, we can develop a similarly designed program to have you participate in. So thank you for attending. Is this an annual fellowship? Do you provide these opportunities on a yearly basis? So yes, this is an annual fellowship. It will be throughout the year. This is our first fellowship of this kind. So the idea is, yes, we would like to offer this on a yearly basis, maybe every other year. But yes, the goal is to have this every year. Another question we've gotten, would board members who are not actually paid by the utility benefit from this? Great question. So again, while this program is focused on employees of utilities, board members would most likely benefit tremendously from this. And there might be an opportunity to get board members involved and engaged, and that might be something to consider in the future. So again, appreciate that question. Definitely something that we'll take note of. A question about, do you know the travel dates yet? So we haven't set yet the travel dates for May or June. We're looking more towards the end of May, early June for the Washington, D.C. all emerging leaders meeting. So I can give you kind of that time frame of that. It will, within the next few weeks, be finalized. The idea is also to be somewhat flexible, that if several emerging leaders are not available during those dates, that we can change them and hopefully ensure that all participants are able to attend. The last question I have so far is, what do you mean by lab and the cohort? So yes, we have used a few different terms here. So the CWSC started and launched something called the Water Access and Equity Lab. And the reason we call it a lab is because oftentimes there aren't a lot of safe spaces to discuss issues, to try new things out. And so we wanted to create a space, a lab, where you could be, scientists, that you could experiment, you could have a network to collaborate with, to discuss issues with, to try new things, to propose crazy ideas, to be in a space where really nothing was off the table. And so that's why we created the Water Access and Equity Lab, with the idea that we could bring in all kinds of stakeholders, different kinds of stakeholders, as I mentioned, utility members, community action agencies, other nonprofits, local elected leaders, state legislators. So all those different kinds of stakeholders into one room. That's the eventual goal. But the idea here is that it is a lab where you can cook up and try new things. The cohort is, as part of this first group of emerging leaders, you're part of this first cohort of emerging leaders. So you will get to meet with and to collaborate with other utility emerging leaders in different parts of the country. And as you're developing your water access and affordability plan, you'll have the chance to compare notes and develop new ideas with them. So that's the last written question I have on the Q&A side. Are there any, let me just see here. Are there any, I believe you're able to raise your hand. Are there any questions that you'd like to ask live? I have another written question that's just come in. So I have a question that asks, are you associated with the university? Our organization is not associated with a university, but yes, I do teach at the University of Maryland as well as the American University in their law school. My colleague also teaches at GW in the Elliott School for International Affairs, but those are not affiliated with our organization, but we do have experience teaching, which is in large part one of the reasons that we're hosting this fellowship, is to be able to create that space for learning and teaching. Another live question. So we have a question, how about a water agency at university? I think we have one at UCLA. Without more information, I'm not sure I can answer that question, but if please feel free to email me, and I can put my email in the chat. I believe it's also been included in the emails that we've sent out. But just to clarify in terms of application requirements, so you must be a full-time employee of a water or wastewater utility, the idea being that this first iteration will focus on water utilities and engaging them in this space and creating that opportunity for them to lead. So I know when we often think of water access and affordability and assistance issues, we want to ensure that utilities are able to take that leadership position and be that nationwide example of what it means to both provide quality services and be able to be responsive to the needs and challenges faced by their community. So for this iteration, it will be focused on the utility members. Any additional questions? I believe I'm just trying to click through, see if there's any other written questions. I'm not seeing any written questions. If anyone has any last remaining questions that they want to raise their hand, we can do it live, or feel free to write in the chat. The last thing I would say is I'll give a few minutes for people to ask any last remaining questions, but just as one thing I'll say, we're really excited about this opportunity. And we've been working, like as I said, with water and wastewater utilities for several years now in the context of our American Water Access Survey and other work that we've done to advance this idea of access and affordability and assistance, all from both perspectives. So working with utilities, working with community action agencies, working with other nonprofits who are engaged in ensuring that everyone has access to water and sanitation. And so this fellowship is that next step to provide that opportunity for us to learn together. We realize every year that we do our work that there's always something new to learn, there's always something new to try. And that's, again, what sparked the idea of calling this a Water Access and Equity Lab, that we're always learning, regardless of how much we do know, we're always in a position to learn new things, to learn from others. And so we're creating that space with this fellowship to learn new things and to learn from other people. And so that is our hope, that we will get that chance to learn together. Yes, so I have one more question, possibly two more questions, and then I think we will close. So one question was, what if I work for a municipal government and my work is mostly on the utility, but I'm not a full-time employee? So unfortunately, again, this is only for full-time employees. Again, this is our first year of this. So the focus is on full-time employees at utilities. I have a question, when was the CWSC founded? The CWSC was founded in 2015. How much time would be required? Our water employees are very overworked, but I know they could use your information. So yes, this is a great question. I've gotten this question from a few people, and I've really hesitated to put an hour number on it, like how many hours, because we frankly never done it. And so I don't want to underestimate or overestimate, but what I can say is that there's really two things, or three, I would say two halves of the fellowship. The first is participating in those learning and engagement workshops that will be virtual. And so you'll have some readings to do, but the idea is that it's not Again, like the application, not intended to be burdensome, really intended to be a learning opportunity and something interesting and engaging for you to participate in, being exposed to new things. So that's the first half. The second half is developing the water access and affordability plan. And that's going to be far more demanding, but the idea is that the CWSC is serving as a technical consultant to you. So we will be working with you to do a lot of that legwork, and so we're there to support you. And we can take on as much or as little as you would like, but the idea is that you're leading the effort and we're supporting that effort. So those are the two kind of parts of the fellowship. That will be the most time intensive, but of course, we're here to work within your schedules, and I'm sure we can find a way to make it work. And actually, I will highlight, which I'm not sure I've said earlier, but that's one of the reasons we did this is that, and I was just saying to my colleague before this, that, water utility, those that work at water and wastewater utilities are literally on a daily basis trying to just provide us services. And so it's really difficult to think about anything that is less than absolutely or more than absolutely essential. And so sometimes there are certain things and issues that get pushed back to the back burner, not because of anything other than there's just not enough hours in the day, which I'm sure we all feel. But the hope behind this fellowship is that it's creating that space and opportunity for utilities to dedicate a little bit of time with significant support from us and our partnerships in developing that plan, but also helping the emerging leaders take the reins and take that leadership position. So I'll give one last opportunity for any additional questions, either written or live. Just go through and make sure I've answered the questions we've received. And again, if there's any questions, I will put it in the chat. Let me find the chat box. So I've just put my email address into the chat. If you have any additional questions for us, or if there's anything that you'd like to discuss before you submit your application, please do not hesitate to reach out. We're happy to talk through that. We're happy to answer any questions you have or talk through any challenges that you perceive you may have. So with that, I'm just going to check one more time. I haven't received any new questions. So with that, I will close the session, but thank you so much for attending. I really look forward to receiving your applications. Again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. This recording will be made publicly available. And so if you'd like to turn back to it, you can. And I will also make the PowerPoint available in case you have any questions about that. So thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.